We're going to be talking about abstract architectural photography. And mainly within architecture, you're going to find that a lot of these things apply to abstract as well. And I'm just going to go through some notes and some ideas of what abstract architectural photography is. In general, when we talk about abstract photography, we talk about something that lacks context, something that we have a hard time figuring out what it is. And we're going to see why that's so interesting in a minute. I like showing this slide in my teachings, and if landscape or travel photography are very rich in detail in what they present to us, it's more like a novel, very descriptive, bringing us into a story with a lot of details. A biography is more like street photojournalism. It's more objective as something can be. Kind of depicts a moment in history, a moment in time, talks more about our social circumstances, if it's an event that happened or a place that we're visiting and seeing. Whereas fine art and abstract is more like poetry and prose. It's more about what it doesn't say than what it does say. Now, this is something that I have out, and I want to talk about this because it's the difference between just something abstract to something that's fine art that could be abstract. So like I said, abstract photography is the view of an object where the entire shape is hidden from view, meaning it's out of context. However, if we want to elevate something to the level of fine art, because a lot of people ask me, what is fine art? What does it mean, fine art photography? Fine art photography overlaps the same notion, meaning it takes something out of context when it comes to abstract fine art, yet fine art focuses on conceptual look at a subject and its surrounding. So fine art photography has the ability to work across many photographic themes, and this is probably the most important part, what I've underlined here. It shows the vision of the photographer and the interpretation of the photographer more than the actual subject that's being photographed. So it's your own interpretation of a scene. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. I just want you to remember this sentence: the interpretation, the vision and interpretation of the photographer rather than the subject itself. So why do we love it so much? Human brain loves to figure things out. It loves the aha moment. The whole concept of aesthetics in art is in its infancy. It's being studied right now. And one of the primary research on the topic is this guy, Professor Ramachandran, and he's a professor at the University of California. And he's a neuroscientist, and he's fascinated with what goes on in our brain when we see art or when we see something beautiful. Now, you don't always associate beauty with art. It doesn't always have to go together. There's a lot of different aspects of art. Beauty is just one of them, but he studies that aspect. And he came up with these 10 rules of aesthetic laws. And he finds that no matter where across the world, crossing genders, crossing cultures, crossing religions, these rules will always apply. And one of them applies very much to us when it comes to abstract photography. And that is the concept of what he calls grouping. It's the fact that our brain likes to figure things out on its own. It likes to discover something and get that aha moment. Maybe when you're looking at this, you can see a Dalmatian here, maybe you can't. But once you do, you go, oh, I see it. It's cool. In photography, we really appreciate topics like that. And we consider an image like this to be a kind of a wow image. It's very different from what we've normally seen. So that's one of the aspects that we really enjoy with abstract photography and why we like it so much. Another one is the simplified scene can be reinterpreted again and again. It's not like a realistic painting where everything is presented to us on a platter. There's no room for the imagination. With abstract photography or abstract in general, we always see something different. And as we change, what we see changes as well. And by eliminating context, we leave plenty of room for the interpretation. The viewer plays a larger role in finding their own beauty. So it's not just about us creating an image, but it's also the viewer interprets it on their own according to what they see, because we took so much out of the story. It's very similar to poetry. A lot of people can have different interpretations of the same poem because it speaks to their own personal experiences differently. When it comes to architectural abstract photography, we have a very strong weight on form. Okay, and what does form mean? Formalism in general. It means all the things that you can see with your senses on the image. What do I mean with my senses? Things like line, light, and shadow, color. texture and pattern, shape, volume, space, composition, time and motion. What's lacking here is my own personal concepts or interpretation. It's just about the shapes and lines and forms. It's not about me personally, and it's not about a social statement. Okay, those things do not apply to formalism. So abstract architectural photography leans very heavily on these things. However, there is room for a little interpretation, and we're going to see that. I wanted to share with you some of these images where taking something out of context. We have one of the submissions is very similar to this. When you look at this, you don't really understand what it is you're seeing, but looking further, it is the middle beam of a bridge. And once you realize, you go, that's so cool, that's nice. It's more depth. A different perspective of seeing something adds more interest. Light and shadow, playing with gradient lighting. We're going to see that today quite a bit. Whenever you're dealing with abstract architectural photography, you don't have a lot of details. So you're going to have to enhance your details and add depth with light and shadow. But more so with architectural photography, because architecture in general deals with three-dimensional subject matter, what people would call space and volume, we have to bring back that volume with gradient lighting. The gradation of light creates depth in what we see. And I want to give you a little example of how to see light when you're out shooting. This is a shot straight out of the camera. It's very important when you are shooting to notice the lines that are created, lines and shapes that are created only from the light that's there. So if I was to look at this image, I would pretty much separate it into 3 different areas. And I would work on those areas in my post-processing. I would have area number 1. You can see the triangle, the shadow that's created here. The triangle that's created from the darks. There's the bright area, the trapezoid in the middle. And then another shadow to the right. And those would be how I would kind of go about processing this. Another image that deals with abstract architecture, because you have a lot of shapes and lines and geometric forms, or it could be curves. But lines. I have nice, beautiful curvy lines. I have straight lines, but also these tend to be more feminine. Whenever you have softer light or more curves, it tends to be associated more with the feminine, whereas the rigid, hard, grid-like is more masculine. So I try to create juxtaposition and tension between the two. In this image here, very similar to this image, but processed differently, slightly different composition. But you can see I was at similar location photographing them. I highly recommend playing with duplication and symmetry. So all I did was duplicate this side to create a 100% symmetrical image. Now, you're rarely going to find in nature something that's 100% symmetrical. So you can create it in post. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about interpretation. Okay, the own artist, photographer's interpretation of a scene. So this is an image I took. And by the way, all these images are the Oculus in New York. It's the new train station at the World Trade, designed by architect and engineer Santiago Calatrava. I love his work, follow his work around the world, and I enjoy photographing it. So when I was shooting this, I was fascinated by the foreground to the background lines, how it was leading me. And I asked myself, what am I celebrating here? In my eyes, because this building was built where the Twin Towers fell, my guiding kind of roadmap to post-process it was to pay homage to the Twin Towers. So I processed it in a way that these 2 beams were more illuminated than the others. So that was my own personal interpretation of the scene, by having these illuminated and then a little reflection, and adding gradient lighting to draw the eye into the scene. So subconsciously, when you're looking at the image, that is what your eyes are seeing. Okay, so having a vision, having a roadmap, knowing where it is you're going, I would say is paramount to creating a fine art image.